Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to today's second half. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, my merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe and click the like button. It's fast and free. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's second half. Shall we? This is part 7 of Dogman, Bigfoot, Werewolf, Wildman, historic experiences in the media. And just like normal, we'll start with the source, then the title, and the body of the paper. Let's get into it. Source: John Burns, 1954. My Search for BC's Giant Indians. Missing Chehalis girl returns after nearly a year absence. Claims she was abducted by a hairy giant. Chehalis Reservation, British Columbia, 1872. Seraphine Long, 17-year-old Chehalis native who disappeared nearly a year ago, arrived back at the res a few days ago, in the state of utter exhaustion, too weak to talk. She was put to bed, and at the same night gave birth, but the infant died within a few hours. At the time of her disappearance, she was about to marry a young brave named Quilak, and was last seen going to gather cedar roots. When questioned about the events since that time, she stated that she had been abducted by one of the hairy giants said to inhabit the region. The creature smeared tree gum over her eyelids so that she could not see, hoisted her on his shoulder, and raced off with the struggling woman to a cave on Mount Morris. Here she was kept prisoner with her abductor and his elderly parents. They fed me well, she said. After almost a year, she grew sick and pleaded with the captor. I wished to see my own people before I die. He reluctantly gave in, and after putting tree gum on her eyelids, carried her back to the res. Source: Daily Evening Bulletin, San Francisco, California, August 6th, 1873. The Wild Man Seen Again, San Francisco, California, August 6, 1873. The Wild Man, who has been seen so often in the mountains east of here for the last few years, and who has incorrectly been stated to be a species of gorilla, was seen again recently near Squaw Valley. He was engaged in picking thimbleberries and was perfectly naked. He was covered all over with long black hair and had long gray whiskers. He is a white man, large and powerful, at least 6 feet high. His fingernails have grown out several inches in length. Downing was within 20 feet of him when he raised up from picking berries. He stood perfectly still and looked at Downing some time and then started to run. Downing was sitting down picking berries at the time himself, when this wild creature raised up of the low brush near him. He had not seen him before. Downing was out hunting and was well armed. He is a gentleman of undoubted veracity. Many others of our citizens have at different times caught sight of this monster. W.M. Arnold, an old and well-known citizen, saw him some time ago, sitting on top of a large rock, engaged in a highly romantic and to him no doubt delightful occupation of scratching himself. He is the constant terror of the Indians in the mountains eastward, who all have either seen him or know of his existence. They tell of the most marvelous stories of his performances. They think he is either the devil or some dead white man whose ghost has returned to annoy them. There can be no doubt of the reality of this wild man, as he has been seen so often by the most credible witnesses. Source: John Green, 1981, Sasquatch, The Apes Among Us. Originally from the Daily Independent, Helena, Montana, USA, September 19th, 1875. A Strange Creature, Austin, Texas, September 1875. A wild boy was lately captured near Austin, Texas. He was first discovered wallowing in a pond of shallow water, and when approached, he broke like a quarter horse, running about a mile before he could be overtaken by men on ponies. Riding up near, the boy was lassoed when a fierce contest ensued, the strange being striking, kicking, and lunging about in the most frightful manner, and apparently being frightened almost to death. Finally, he was overpowered, tied, and taken to the house of men who first discovered him. His body was covered with hair about 4 inches long, and from the size and appearance, he is supposed to be about 12 years of age. He is unable to talk, but possesses reasoning power, and now follows his captor like a dog. Source: Daily Centene, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, October 4th, 1875. The Monster at Kit's Swamp. Incident location: near Newberry, North Carolina. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, October 4th, 1875. Asa Grady lives with his family in Kit's Swamp, near Newberry, North Carolina. He is reported to be a sober and truth-telling man. Else somebody might doubt the correctness of a story he tells about a monster that inhabits the woods in his neighborhood. From the number of chickens that Grady has lately lost, he suspected that some neighboring marauder is living on poultry. So he watched and saw a being that appeared to be half a man, half beast, making free with a hen roost. The nondescript had the head and face like a wandergo, with a long, shadowy beard, and hands and feet and legs exactly like a man. Neither did the thing wear no clothes, which did not seem to shock its half-human nature. It looked so much like a human that the sympathizing Grady did not dare to shoot at it. So it waddled back into the woods with his arms full of chicken. A few days after, when Grady was at work in the field, he heard his wife and children screaming at the house. A dark vision of a man-monster destroying his family's peace came before his eyes as he ran home with a club in hand. He was just in time. The thing was just preparing to run to the woods with 2 of Grady's children, 1 in each arm. He slipped up behind the monster and let him have one in the head with the club, at which he dropped the squalling little children and ran for dear life to his cave in the woods. Grady has set all the workers his section of Kit's Swamp gorilla hunting. He went to capture the thing alive, if they can, dead if they must, and give Barnum a whack at it. Source: The Ottawa Times, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, December 4th, 1875. Man gone wild seen at Stump Lake, British Columbia, December 4th, 1875. A wild man identified as Martin, who at one time had a store in Victoria, was sighted here a few days ago. He asked a shepherd for something to eat, and the latter gave him the remnants of his dinner. Martin was described as having a strip of what appeared to be a piece of old trousers around his neck, and not another rag or hat. His hair was gray, matted, and hangs down to his shoulders, and his body was becoming thickly covered with hair like an animal, not the gorilla species. He carried a rifle, which was very rusty. He did not answer the many questions asked by the shepherd, but did remark, after finishing his food, that this is the first bread I have eaten in 5 years. The shepherd offered him clothes, but he seemed unconscious of anything and simply walked away. Source: A Wild Man in the Mountains, Union, San Diego, California, March 9th, 1876. Prospector comes face to face with hairy wild man. Warner's Ranch, California, April 30th, 1876. Turner Helm, a prospector, reported that he recently encountered an unusual hair-covered man in the mountains about 10 miles east of Warner's Ranch. He stated he was walking along looking down at the ground when he suddenly heard someone whistle. Looking up, he saw something sitting on a large boulder about 15 or 20 paces from him. He supposed it to be some kind of animal and immediately came down on it with a needle gun. The object instantly rose to its feet and proved to be a man. He appeared to be covered all over with coarse black hair, seemingly 2 to 3 inches long, like the hair of a bear. His beard and hair on his head were long and thick. He was a man of about medium size and rather fine features. Not at all like those of an Indian, but more like an American or Spaniard. The two stood gazing at each other for a few moments, and then Mr. Helm spoke to the singular creature, first in English, and then Spanish, and then Indian. But the unusual man remained silent. He then advanced towards Mr. Helm, who, not knowing what his intentions might be, came down on him again with his gun to keep him at a distance. The oddity at once stopped, as though he knew there was danger. Mr. Helm called to his partner, but the wind was blowing so hard he did not hear him. The wild man then turned and went over the hill and was soon out of sight. Both Mr. Helm and his partner stated they had frequently before seen this man's tracks in part of the mountains, but had supposed them to be tracks of Indians. Source: William F. Cody, The Life of Honorary William F. Cody, F.E. Bliss, Hartford, Connecticut, 1879, The Adventures of Buffalo Bill Cody. Buffalo Bill reports huge human bones found. Niobrara County, Wyoming, 1876. William F. Cody, Buffalo Bill, has reported an unusual find in the area. He reports as follows. While we were in the Sandhills scouting the country, the Pawnee Indians brought into camp some very large bones, one which the surgeon of the expedition pronounced to be the thigh bone of a human being. The Indians said the bones were those of a race of people who long ago had lived in the country. They said these people were 3 times the size of man of present day, that they were so swift and strong that they could run by the side of a buffalo, and taking the animal in one arm, could tear off a leg and eat it as they ran. These giants, said the Indians, denied the existence of the Great Spirit. When they heard the thunder or saw the lightning, they laughed and declared that they were greater than either. This so displeased the Great Spirit that he caused a deluge. The water rose higher and higher till it drove these proud giants from the low grounds to the hills, and hence to the mountains. At last, ever the mountain tops were submerged, and the mammoth men were drowned. After the flood subsided, the Great Spirit came to the conclusion that he had made man too large and powerful. He therefore corrected his mistake by creating a race of that size and strength of man at present day. This is the reason the Indians told us that the man of modern times is small and not like the giants of old. The story has been handed down among the Pawnee for generations, but what is its origin no man can say. Source: Agitator, Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, August 28, 1877. Our neighbors, Wellsboro, PA, August 28, 1877. Hughesville and the vicinity have been in the state of excitement for a few days past on account of the rumor that a wild man has been seen in the woods near the place. The report was not fully credited until a few days ago, when the strange object was seen by Honorary George Steck and others in a cornfield owned by Mr. Steck. The news spread like wildfire, and the excitement was terrible. Every able-bodied man ran for his gun, and a company of 30 or 40 men and boys, fully armed, was immediately formed and started pursuing the object, resolved to solve the mystery. It is reported to be a very large man, entirely naked, very shy, running swiftly away when he was approached by one. The search party returned late the same day, not having been successful in capturing the mysterious being, although several of the party claimed to have seen it at a distance. It's probably some lunatic who, to suit his mad fantasy, has taken to the woods, there to end his wretched days. Source: The Sydney Morning Herald, Australia, October 12, 1877. An extraordinary animal. Sutton Forest, New South Wales, October 12, 1877. Mr. Prosser, manager at Messrs. Amos and Company sawmill at Amos Siding near Sutton Forest, has just informed us that the most peculiar animal has been seen by two men, Patrick Jones and Patrick Doyle, residents of Sutton Forest, in the bush between Cable Siding and Jordan Crossing. Mr. Prosser himself has seen the footprints. They were 3 feet apart, and the impression made by the feet is similar to those of an elephant. The animal is described as 7 feet in height, with the face like a man and long shaggy hair, and makes a tremendous noise. 14 of the men from the mill, fully armed, intend starting on Saturday next to the endeavor to capture this wild man of the woods. Mr. Prosser assures us there is no exaggeration about the affair, and everyone at the mill believes in the existence of this strange creature. Source: The Indiana Progress, Pennsylvania, USA, October 25, 1877. Wild man reported in local woods. Houghton Lake, Michigan, October 25, 1877. A wild man is reported to be in the woods in this vicinity. He has terribly long nails and is as fleet as a deer. Source: Oshkosh Daily, Northwestern, Wisconsin, USA, December 3, 1877. Town has a little wild man. Standard, Vermont, December 3rd, 1877. This town now has a wild man of the woods, 4 feet high, covered with hair, with a head and fiery red hair that hangs over his shoulders, and who runs like a deer and yells like a hyena. Source: The Evening Gazette, Port Jarvis, New York, USA, November 20th, 1879. Originally from the Philadelphia Times, Pennsylvania. Who is he? Damascus, New York, 1877. 2 citizens, while looking for a lost cow in a swamp in this township, came upon a bareheaded, ragged, and barefooted man with short, cropped gray hair and a beard. He ran away when discovered, but was captured after a long chase. It was evident that he had been in the forest for some time. He talked wildly in a language that no one in the neighborhood understood. He was finally taken to the county seat and placed in jail. There it was found his strange language was French. I am the Empire. The county authorities refused to assume any responsibility in the case of the strange being, and threw him on the Damascus authorities. No one in the township would take charge of the unfortunate lunatic as a pauper, and as an easy way out of the dilemma, they placed him on the Erie Railway train with a ticket to a station in the neighboring county. Before the train reached the station, the man leapt from the care while in rapid motion, swam the Delaware, and disappeared once more in the woods of Wayne County. An account of the circumstance of his capture and the extraordinary disposal that was made of him was printed in the local paper, and some weeks after it was learned that the wild man was a pauper lunatic from New York County. He was a Frenchman who had lost his mind over the defeat of the French army by the German and the destruction of the empire. Having been pronounced an incurable case, the county authorities were taking him to a state institution via the Erie Railway. He escaped at a small station bordering on Wayne County, and a long search failed to effect his capture. Source: the McKean County Miner, Smethport, McKean County, Pennsylvania, USA, January 3rd, 1878. A Wild Man of the Mountains, Globe Valley, North Carolina, January 3rd, 1878. A gentleman who resides near Fairview, Watauga County, writes that in the company of several gentlemen he went out prospecting in a portion of Globe Valley. While in the heart of the valley, some miles from any place of habitation, their attention was attracted toward a peculiar specimen of humanity. Some 40-yard distance, they neared the object, or giant, as he seemed, until they came within 20 step of him. Then they stopped still and advised each other as to whether they should go nearer. While they were consulting, one of the gentlemen gave a yell and jumped toward the wild man. When he, the wild man, started toward the party a few steps, stopped still and began pounding himself in the breast with his ponderous fists. There he stood for 2 minutes, evincing no power of speech. Suddenly he turned and bounded off with the speed of a deer. The party then repaired to the house of one of the men, secured a gun, pistol, and other articles of warfare, and went in pursuit of the strange being. They searched the balance of the day, but nothing could be seen of the object of their pursuit. During the search, they ascended the crags of Blowing Rock and discovered a small cave in which was found a bed of leaves and many bones resembling those of a possum. It is supposed this cave has afforded this wild man a home for many years. Our correspondent describes the wild man as being about 6 feet 5 inches tall, with broad shoulders, long apish arms, smooth face, funnel-shaped head. His body was covered in dark brown hair, near 2 inch long. His head and a great portion of his forehead was covered with long, luxuriant dark red tresses. Our correspondent affirms that this is the first time this wild man has ever been seen or heard of in the neighborhood. Source: the Colorado Spring Gazette, Colorado, USA, March 30th, 1878. Terrible wild man discovered. Rosetta, Colorado, March 30th, 1878. A party of prospectors arrived in town and gave the description of a terrible wild man which they had discovered in the Sangre de Cristo region. The man is represented as being about 7 feet in height, very large and strong, and clothed in deer pelt. We understand that the party will try to capture this wild man of the mountains this spring.